Welcome to the West and North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Arsenal questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
Tim, we are back after another action-packed week of the ups and downs of Arsenal.
It's definitely a roller coaster these days, isn't it?
I don't know what to expect anymore. I guess expect the unexpected these days.
Yeah. You know, it would be nice to have some just kind of several weeks of nice, calm, relaxing, enjoyable days instead of the lowest lows and the highest highs all in kind of a short couple day span. So
I think they call that consistency.
Oh, is that what we need?
Yes. They're dreadfully lacking in consistency.
Yeah.
It's this thing that other teams have that we can't seem to figure out.
Yeah, if only two smart podcasters talked about consistency over the last couple weeks.
If only they listened to us.
Yeah. Fire everybody, hire us as everything.
Well, we're here to talk more. If people would only listen to us, maybe we could change the world. So anyway, the last week has me wanting a drink. So let's talk about what we're drinking, because I got something interesting this week.
Oh, what do you got? I'm interested. I'm intrigued.
I have a bottle from 2008.
Ooh.
A limited early release of a Stone Old Guardian barley wine style ale.
Ooh. Are you sure you're going to be able to stick with us the whole time? I'm guessing that's what, in the 12%?
11.26.
Yeah. You're going to enjoy the night.
Yeah. It has aged well. It's smoother than I expected.
Huh.
It's got a very I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, that's like it's a lighter color than I was expecting. I was expecting a much darker chocolatey color, because usually those things are like that.
Yeah, this is more of an amber color.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised when I poured it, but it tastes really good. I'm actually surprised.
I mean, barley wines are some of those types of beers that when they're good, but they can just go really bad really quick.
Totally.
And with that alcohol percentage, you could really it starts tasting like vodka with oatmeal sometimes.
Yeah, I could see where it could go that way. I definitely won't drink the whole bottle. I think this is I might have to split this over a couple nights, try to recap it for tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, finishing off a full bottle of barley wine. I imagine it's one of the bigger bottles too. It's not like your 16.
Oh yeah, it's a solid.
Yeah, that's a big solid bottle. I mean, I like Stone. I like their brewery.
Yeah.
If you're ever down in San Diego, if you go to their brewery / gastro pub, they have good food there. It's really beautiful. It's definitely like kind of on the high end of breweries anymore, but yeah, I enjoy their stuff.
Ooh, I could go for a trip to San Diego for some beer. That sounds good.
Yeah, there's actually a bunch of good breweries down there. I'm trying to remember what the smaller one is, and I'm completely blanking on it, but there's about 3 or 4 really good ones to go visit down there.
Who is it that does the Sculpin IPA?
Oh, God, what is the name? I forgot. I don't buy them anymore because they got bought out.
They got bought out, yeah.
But what is, I can see their label.
Ballast Point.
Yes, that is exactly it.
That's another San Diego brewery that's pretty good. Or was. Yeah. I haven't had them in a long time myself.
I'm sure it's still really good. I have this thing about about InBev and all those big conglomerates.
Well, you blink and your favorite one gets snatched up. I mean, you might not even notice. They're sneaky these days.
And I've heard some insider baseball about what happens when those companies get bought up and what happens to recipes and where it gets actually brewed and all that fun stuff. So. Oh
yeah, you gotta outsource that to the big breweries so they can mass produce your microbrews.
Exactly. It's kind of like when a big corporation takes over a soccer club.
Weird. So what are you drinking this week?
I'm also drinking kind of something off the beaten path. I'm doing a draft mead that I picked up.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's Wildflower semi-dry. crisp and refreshing. Comes in at 6.5, which I know is nothing for you, Mr. 11.2, but it's in the high side for me. And I'm just about to crack it right now. Interesting. Meaty. Yeah, that is definitely a mead. I brew meads, and this is actually really good for a mead. It's better than I do usually. It has a much
better in your home brews.
Yeah, a little bit crisper than my last brew that I did.
Oh yeah, you started one at the beginning of the pandemic, didn't you?
Yeah. That one actually failed. That one did not go well at all. But I have some growlers that are bubbling away right now. I'm doing some experiments with them. I have like one that has some Indian spices that we got in Kenya, if you remember. Nice. And then have one that's a ginger and marionberry where I just threw in the whole marionberries. So I'm excited to see how that turned out.
I don't think we've ever even mentioned Kenya on this podcast, but I'm saving that for like the summer when we have nothing else to talk about. So stay tuned for that.
I found out where we can watch Kenyan games live if we ever want to.
Hey, I'd watch some Kenyan soccer. Why not?
Yeah.
I have a Kenyan national team jersey that I don't fit into, but I own one. That's the important part.
Yeah. I still fit into my Gor Mahal, I think it is, team jersey that I got. Knockoff, nice. Of course.
Of course. All right. Well, let's move on to Tim's bit. It tickles me every time we talk about that.
Yeah, I think it might have to stick. All right. So for my Tim bit this week, I love Daniel Ek's name being translated into Danny Oak, and it's what I'm going to be calling him from here on out. So this first originated with me trying to go through Arsenal's history and find other Arsenal players with tree names in their last name.
Okay.
But unfortunately, there isn't a lot. So I just found fun Arsenal names from most of them from fairly far back in Arsenal's history.
Okay.
So you probably don't know who they are. And then I'm going to ask you if you knew what position they do. And I'm not going to do like left back, right back, but like defense, midfield, forward, because some of them kind of exist before modern positions existed. And then as bonus points, giving me the decade they played ish.
Oh, okay. What's the range? How far back are we going here?
I will give a range of one started in 1898.
So I can't just say the 90s. I have to specify the 1890s.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And then one of them, and the most recent one, finished their Arsenal career in 1986. So that's kind of the span.
Okay.
And as I said, I just went for fun names or for things like that. So, and if they cross multiple decades, like one or two of them may, I will give you whatever decade they played in.
Okay.
So let's start with Sidney Hoare. Sidney Hoare.
Okay.
Last name Hoar.
Okay. Sidney Hoare. I'm gonna say he's a midfielder from the 1960s.
Nope. He's a forward from the 1920s.
I'm going to do horrible at this.
Horrible. 117 appearances. So, a few. All right. Let's go with Tony Woodcock. Tony Woodcock.
I'm going to say defender from the 80s.
Well, you got it half right. You got the harder part right, which is he is from the 80s. And I really feel like his name just suggests defender, but he is a forward.
Okay.
Played for Arsenal from 82 to 86, 1982 to 86.
Slightly before my time. I mean, I might have been able to catch a couple years of his tenure if I was watching soccer as a wee child, a wee babe.
169 appearances. All right, we got Bill Gooing. Bill Gooing.
Bill Gooing. Okay. I'm going with the 40s, and I'm going with midfielder.
Nope. Unfortunately, he's a forward from 1901 to 1905.
Oh man,
I've just never really seen that name before. Gooing, Gooing.
gooing. Interesting. I feel like I'm just throwing darts.
Well, you got one decade right, which I'm pretty impressed with. All right, let's go with Ian Ure. I just thought that it was a weird name. Ure. He's Scottish, so maybe it's very common in Scotland. Ian Ure.
Ure. I'm gonna guess 40s again. I'm gonna stick to that, and I'm gonna go forward.
No, he was a defender in the 60s, 1963 to 69.
I shouldn't be too hard on myself. This is a very challenging game.
To be honest, I've heard of none of these players before putting this list together, so I would not feel bad at all.
I mean, if you're really out there and you're getting upset because I'm getting these wrong, please enlighten us. Come on our show and give us an Arsenal history, because you clearly know more than me if you're getting any of these right.
Yeah, and I'm picking ones that are, I mean, it's like 200 to 100 appearances. So they've played, you can definitely tell that they're not like a lone player, but it's not like they have the 600 games that like Seaman has.
Uh-huh.
And then finally, we have John Dick. John Dick.
John Dick. I'm gonna go 70s, and I'm gonna go midfield.
Wrong on the era. It's 1898 to 1912.
Okay,
he was the old
was
one.
Way off.
Midfield, it's hard to say. He was a halfback, which, if I remember formations back then, it must have been the pyramid shape where you had your goalie, two defenders, three. So it was like the reverse Christmas tree.
Uh-huh.
So I think a halfback during that era would be midfield. Please send it in and correct me. I'm trying to remember, because the big switch was in the 30s with God, why am I forgetting his name? Herbert Chapman of Arsenal, who changed it to the VM formation. So that was pre-VM formation. So I'm gonna say midfield as a halfback. So half right.
I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. So that's your quiz on fun Arsenal names. The rest of them are pretty straightforward. So
I feel like I need to delve into deep Arsenal history, like early teams. Like that would be fascinating. I'm sure there's some books out there. So if you know of good books about old Arsenal, send those recommendations our way, because I would love to read.
I mean, I know I've read a lot about the 1930s teams just in other like general books, because the 1930s Arsenal team is probably one of the most influential like teams in soccer formations under Herbert Chapman. But there's a huge gap in my knowledge, just because there wasn't a lot going on. So yeah, if you know any specific Arsenal books, that'd be awesome to send my way. I love reading books about soccer.
Cool. Yeah. We need more input on stuff we should be looking into and reading and brushing up on more Arsenal knowledge, because clearly there's decades and decades of things we don't know.
Yeah, maybe we should do like a Arsenal book / movie corner during the summer when the games aren't coming fast and heavy.
Yeah, I still need to seek out that 89 movie. I know they were streaming it at some point, and I don't know if it still exists somewhere that I can watch it, but I'd like to.
I actually have the DVD of it. I should send it your way, because when I joined, I was a member of Arsenal, like the club, and I got this little package, and part of it was a DVD of the 89 unbeaten. Oh no, you're not talking about the 89 unbeaten. You're talking about the 89 team, not the
Invincibles team.
Yeah, I gotcha. Sorry, numbers.
Too many. Okay, well, now moving on from the past. Well, still talking about the more recent past now. Moving on into slightly closer to our current timeline here. Things happened in this last week. Arsenal things happened in this last week. We had a first leg of the Europa League semifinal against Villarreal. Villarreal. I always want to say Villarreal. I don't know why. Villarreal. And it went worse than expected or better than expected. What do you think? What's your feeling coming out of that first leg?
You know what's so I knew it was going to be a tough game. I always knew it was going to be a tough game. I didn't think it was going to be a walkover. What's funny is I ran the gambit of emotions during that game, which is I literally almost turned it off after the red card on Ceballos. I was already mad at Ceballos. I thought he had a very poor game, and then him getting a red card was a cherry on top. And I had I watched him on my Xbox. I had my Xbox controller like up to about to turn it off, and then I'm like, no, take a breath. It can only get better from here, to be honest. and I'm glad I didn't. And I left the game with a sense of like relief. But then when I watched the replay, I watched the extended highlights before talking to you today, and I realized that it wasn't a good game by any measures. And we pulled ourselves out of complete elimination, but we're still under the cosh. It's still not going to be an easy task in the next leg. Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that was pretty awful. The lineup was weird. Let's start at the beginning, because I think that was the maybe the strangest part of all this was the lineup that was put out was very confusing. I think when it came out, I was like, where's Pepe actually going to play in this game? Because it came out and I was like, maybe they're playing him up top. Maybe he is out in his normal position and it's a false nine situation. That's what it ended up being, really, was Emile Smith Rowe playing a false nine. And it's bizarre trying to play without strikers. I don't know. I think after watching the game, I was really frustrated with the idea that they would try to whip this thing out and play this new style, this new formation with only, I think, one other game under their belt where they actually tried that with Willian, I think against Man City. And it's like, it feels like it's Arteta's go-to formation when he's trying to outsmart a coach that he admires, or like feels like he has to pull out some tricks with. And it seems like it's great on paper and in theory, and then when they went to play it, it was like it just didn't come together. It didn't feel like there was any momentum going forward at all. And we've seen Arsenal flounder under different formation changes and style changes like that. And I think that is a work in progress and not something that should have been deployed during this really important game. So,
well, I mean, City does it all the time. In fact, they did it today in the Champions League, where they'll play a game without a striker. And I think that's probably where he gets it, is because Guardiola does the same thing where he pulls us out when he's trying to be clever. And sometimes Guardiola himself is too clever, and it bites him. The other thing being said is that Man City has a much better quality of personnel.
Oh, absolutely.
Than Arsenal does, just at a very objective level. And yeah, I don't see this as working in any real way, and it definitely did surprise me. And I mean, it showed. We had 0 shots on goal in the first half, in the first 60 minutes, I believe, was the tally when I was going through.
Yeah, I don't know what the first excuse me, I don't know what the first half stats were, but we ended the game with the same amount of attempts on goal as Villarreal, nine attempts. So where we started and where we ended were okay, but yeah, it looked disjointed, and especially giving up not one but two goals in the first half. I was very nervous, and there were definitely players I was just like, we need to do a wholesale swap at the half and try again, because it just was not working. I think that there was a lot of frustration both with um, Arteta's lineup or formation selection, and then just the players, like who he deployed, um, and not making changes early enough when it clearly wasn't working. I think a lot of people were watching Ceballos, myself included, and you just could tell it was one of those games. And you can just tell with certain players, like those games where you're watching David Luiz and you're just like, this is going to be that game, and you're just waiting for that moment when all hell breaks loose, and he has that moment of madness, and you could just feel it building with Ceballos in this game.
Well, I mean, with Ceballos, I think that it's more common than not that it's one of those games. That's the thing that just bugs me. When I remember my biggest thing is I saw him on the starting sheet. And I'm like, how is he still getting starts? It was like William earlier in the season. Like maybe it's because he was playing in Spain and he thought maybe he was familiar with the opposition, that sort of thing. Although I don't think he played that many games against Villarreal there or recently. And I don't know. Like I thought Ceballos was pretty poor, and I don't know if it's because Ceballos was so poor, but Partey didn't impress me very much either. Both those goals,
No.
I'm loath to say that it was his fault for either of those goals, but he definitely could have done a lot better on both those goals.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't think he had a great game either. I think he, was definitely spread a little thin, trying to control that midfield. It just did not look like those two were on the same page. And yeah, I think the formation in front of them was just not really, they weren't able to link up like they should have. Really just, it was a frustrating game to watch in that first half. And I like you, I was ready to turn it off. It just was not, it's just not working. And I think that is it's the problem with Arteta, really, that we're having to watch him figure these things out in real time. When else is he going to learn these lessons except for in these big situations? I mean, every young player, we say, you got to get them into these tournaments. You got to get young players as many minutes and as much exposure to big games as possible so that they can develop and get resiliency and not get freaked out and nervous and they get into these big games. And I think Arteta's kind of the same way, really. He's a rookie coach who's maybe at times in over his head. I think it's apparent when things aren't going right and he doesn't make a change. I think a lot of people were saying, he's being stubborn by not making changes and not doing what needs to be done to take control of this game again. And in contrast to Emery, who was frequently making changes at the half when he was an Arsenal coach, making changes at halftime to try to right the ship and correct his strategy a little bit. And I think that was, I appreciated that when Emery would do that and they would come out in the second half and be a better team. Well, while Arteta in this game didn't make big changes at the half, the team did improve. I think they played a lot better in the second half. They didn't have a ton to show for it, but they did get a really crucial away goal from a penalty. So getting a goal from a penalty is welcome because so few of those get called for us. I mean, we had one not called already in this game because of handball that was correctly called out by VAR. But there's so many times where things don't go our way. So getting a penalty goal should not be frowned upon. We should take every one of those we can get, really.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, it was a pretty light foul on Saka. I mean, it was a foul in the box, as we always say, but it's one of those ones that we never get called for us, that gets called against us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy to see that we actually got the penalty called. I mean, Pepe's penalty went in, so you can't complain too much. Although I'm always a little nervous when they just shoot it right down the center. There's always
with power. I mean, he was shot with conviction there.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Pepe for the most part had a pretty bright game. I thought he played of the teams. I don't think anyone really gets 5 out of 5 stars in my my rating system, but I think Pepe had a pretty bright game. And for me, the funniest thing was it wasn't a change that Arteta made consciously, but I thought once Ceballos left the game, we looked better. That's when we started getting those shots. That's, when we started just really taking the game. And I don't know if it was that we kind of morphed into a more traditional formations or what, but for what it's worth, maybe it's addition by subtraction.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the match timeline here, it's interesting that Ceballos and Partey really had the bulk of the. They kind of just got overran a little bit, and Ceballos leaving at the really pretty early on in the second half. While it was frustrating, and just I think the most I can't talk. The most frustrating aspect of it was I think everybody could just see it coming with Ceballos, and it was just to be expected. By the 57th minute, it was pretty apparent that he was just not keeping up with the game, and he was having to do things to try to manage the midfield with Partey. And then Partey got us a yellow card like immediately after Ceballos was sent off. So
that was for dissent about the Ceballos, because I mean, at the end of the day, the yellow was a very, I like to call it a light yellow. It was the second yellow wasn't the most egregious, and it was I think that Partey yellow was a little bit weird because really Ceballos was just laying into the ref, and I thought Ceballos might get further repercussions because Ceballos was not having it, and Partey just kind of stood in the way and pushed Ceballos back. And I think the yellow card that Partey got was really just the ref mad at Ceballos, but can't give him another yellow card, so he just gave the next Arsenal player, the next closest Arsenal player, a yellow. So I mean, hopefully it won't come back to haunt us. I don't know. I should pay attention to these things, but I don't know if yellow card accumulation is a thing, about if that sort of thing. But I haven't heard anyone talking about it, so I'm hoping not. But
those things tend to rear their ugly heads when it's far too late. Yeah. Like you hear about it like, oh, he's got 4 cards and the next one he's out. So, you hear that like the day of.
Yeah, you're like, oh, God.
But Odegaard was in the game, had an okay game, but was replaced by Martinelli in the 63rd. I think Martinelli always brings a spark, and that was to our benefit. And it wasn't too long after that Saka got the penalty, so that brought us back into it in the 73rd minute, and Aubameyang made a return late in the game and had a decent look. Got slipped in late in the game, about 85th minute. Had a chance to shoot on goal, and it was one of the few clear shots we had on goal in the whole game, and probably should have done a little better with it, but he kind of got dragged wide a little too much to get where he wanted with that shot. I think he's a little bit better coming in on the other side and was far to the right side of the goal. So that was maybe not the ideal spot to take a shot, but it was one of our more dangerous shots and could have done wonders for our outlook going into the second half, or the second leg. But I will take a 2-1 scoreline. I will take that away goal and feel pretty okay with that.
I mean, away goals are vital, and the nice thing is like I'm not confident we're going to keep a clean sheet at home, so it's nice to have at least one away goal in the bank. It does make it a less intense. Yeah, I mean, based on the first 30 to 50 minutes, I'm happy with that result. It's not the worst. It's better than the slap in the face. It's better going in with 2-0 down. That's just a death sentence. 2-0 down, absolutely. No away goals is just a death sentence. So hopefully the person that got the red card for them is their cornerstone player, Capoe, and their whole team falls apart without him is hopeful. I don't really know if that's true. Although he is one of he used to play for Watford. He is one of the teams or players that knows Arsenal-ish.
Yeah. I saw something that Foyth, who had a pretty strong game against us in that game, he was out for the second leg. So that's one other player. So a couple players that we won't see in the second leg. Interesting to see how that plays out. But I think we're going in the right direction for the second leg as far as getting people back in. I'm very hopeful. I mean, obviously, Aubameyang is back in action, so that's positive. Odegaard's gotten some more minutes over the weekend, so he's looking better and better as he gets back into rhythm a little bit. And it's sounding like Lacazette and Kieran Tierney are back in full training. So I'm pretty hopeful that they will play roles in this game on Thursday. I don't know if that's going to be starting or coming off the bench, but I think both of those players will help elevate this team a little bit more and give us a couple more options, and hopefully don't force us into a situation where we have to play a false nine, because that's ridiculous trying to do something like that on the home leg. And I think the moral of the story in this first leg of this matchup is Arsenal have a hard enough time scoring goals with strikers on the field. So why the hell are we doing it without, or trying to do it without?
I mean, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but it's just like you can kind of see the point, which is that our strength is our midfield right now. That you have all these players that are very talented with Odegaard, Smith Rowe, and Saka, and then even Pepe, who's kind of coming into form a little bit. So you can see why you would want him or want to do that. But I'd rather just kind of put Pepe in a traditional striker role than have a false nine and the no striker thing.
I hate trying to do any comparisons with MLS, but watching the Sounders in the first 3 games of their season, it is amazing what can happen when you put players in positions where they can find success. Like, I think it's apples and oranges comparison. Don't get me wrong here, but I do think that our Arsenal lacks players to fit the roles that Arteta wants. And he's trying to fit square pegs in round holes a lot of the time. And this is a clear example of he does not have the personnel to do this sort of thing. And he still wants to try to do it and try to wring out every bit of technical ability out of these players. But the reality is that what Man City is trying to do and what Arsenal are trying to do are very far apart just based on the personnel that's available. I don't expect Emile Smith Rowe to go out and play that role to any degree close to what Man City is gonna do. Like, the gulf between Emile Smith Rowe and Kevin De Bruyne, as much as we want to compare them, they are way far apart as far as talent levels, at least currently. I'm not saying that there's no chance for Emile Smith Rowe to get to that level, but we're not there. And trying to just throw that formation out there and see what happens it's just not the time to do that. But if you try to put the right people in the right positions, like get a Martinelli out there, you have that available to you. Don't try to make something happen that's not going to happen. Use the tools that you do have that can be successful.
Well, and this can kind of lead us into the transition to the Newcastle game, which is that I'm hopeful that Martinelli does get to start in the the next leg of this tie, because I think Martinelli, the time that he's shown or been on the field over the last 2 games, it's been a bright spot for me, at least.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That, yeah, we can jump right into that game. Again, it's very difficult to compare Villarreal to Newcastle, but it just looked a bit more cohesive. I think it was a lineup and a strategy that it just works, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel right now. It's not the time this season to try to do that. I get that, Arteta is constantly complaining about how he didn't get that preseason, how it's been just an endless run of shit, basically, that he's had to deal with. But, given those circumstances, why make it harder on yourself? Why make it harder on this team? If you want to have that sort of strategy and you want to have tactical flexibility, that's great. Develop that in the off season. Get the personnel to do that. But look at what you have and be realistic about what you're trying to get out of it. You don't have to be complicated. You don't have to be trying to outsmart the other coach. Just put the best players in their best positions and let them go out and do their job. That's all you have to do, really. I don't think he has to overthink this stuff too much. If he wants to get to that point, I'm all for it. I think he has that. I'm grateful that we have a coach that is trying to reach for that level, because there are plenty of these coaches that bounce around from team to team, and they're the Steve Bruces of the world who just pop up, and they're stable and they know how to do their job and they know what they can get out of a team. And that is not where Arteta's at. He's he's going to develop into a very good coach. I imagine giving him 5 years under his belt or a few more seasons, he can pull out these interesting tactical switches and get some results. But we just have to push our way through these growing pains, and it's difficult when we're trying to get to this next level as a team and get to the Champions League and develop into the team we want to be. It's difficult to throw away games on these I don't know, these tactical experiments, we'll call it.
I mean, it's kind of weird that it wasn't reversed. I'd much rather him experiment in the Premier League right now than I would in the Europa League semifinal, leg 1, if you're going to try out a new tactic, or even try it out the week before when we were playing. Who did we play the week before? Why am I blanking on this? I probably should have looked this up. But I mean,
are you talking about in the Premier League or in the
Premier League? Yeah.
League? We had.
Was it?
I'm absolutely no help.
Was it the Everton game?
Yes, Everton. There we go.
Yeah, and I blocked that one out of my mind. But I mean, really, I'd rather just experiment. That might even have been a good experiment because Everton's a good team, probably comparable to a Villarreal team, and so you could see how it would work. And with 4 days in between that game, I doubt there was a lot of personnel changes that were going to happen. So I don't know, but it's hard to take the Newcastle game that seriously though, because Newcastle's really bad this year. They are not good. I don't like. They had a great start to the year, which is the reason why they're still not in relegation mode right now, or in the relegation zone, is because of the start to the year. But even then, it was like very lucky games that they got through. I've watched a couple of their games, and they're garbage. They're trash. And so to base sorry if there's anyone who has soft spots for Newcastle that's listening, but I'm not going to go overboard on the Newcastle game of being super excited. I know you can only play whoever, but I'm the one thing I am going to take forward is that getting Aubameyang to get a goal, and what a goal! That was a beautiful goal. We should take a minute just to pause and enjoy the beautiful things that happen in life, and that goal was just beautiful.
Absolutely. I think both of Arsenal's goals were pretty solid.
Yeah.
El Neni getting in on the goal scoring. I think that was his first Premier League goal of ever or of the season.
I know it's the season. It may be ever.
I know he scored most of his goals in Europa League, but I didn't know if that was his first ever Premier League goal or just the first of this season.
The stat that they rolled out was first Premier League goal this season was the little banner that they had under it when I was watching it, but it could be ever. I don't have a comprehensive knowledge of El Neni's goal scoring. But yeah, so both of them are good. I mean, the first one came off a kind of mishit from Aubameyang that landed right to El Neni, and he destroyed that ball, which is always nice to see a player just leather it. So yeah, both those goals are good. I think it's good that Aubameyang gets the taste for goal because, as we know, strikers are streaky, and scoring a goal means that likely he'll get another one or two going forward if he makes the start, which I'm hopeful that he will.
Yeah. I think Arsenal looked just really solid through that whole game, and that's I guess to be expected. But coming off of a shaky first leg of that Europa League match, I felt like it was important to come out in this game and be dominant and cohesive, and they definitely looked really good playing through the middle, connecting lots of passes. They really just controlled the game very well and created chances, and that's what you should expect playing this sort of team. But 19 attempts on goal to their 5, created some good shots off of set pieces, had 8 chances there, so lots of opportunities. And the setup to get, I think it was Odegaard to Martinelli, who just put a perfect line drive right into Aubameyang's path, and it was not an easy finish. It was kind of one of those, the cross was one of those heights that you could play it multiple ways, and I think Aubameyang went for the flashy finish over the easy header. So outstretched leg, and I felt my hamstring tighten up just watching him try to get his leg high enough to curl that one in. So
speaking of tight hamstrings,
beautiful. Oh, you have a transition with hamstrings.
I am. Well, David Luiz. What do you think about his pulled hamstring? Do you think he was going to start against Villarreal, or was he?
He brings so much, and you could just tell that it was refreshing to have him back on the field. Honestly, it's really sad that he's out again. Hopefully it's not for too long, but as a 34-year-old, these sort of things tend to go longer than they might have a few years ago. I know he's contemplating his next career move, because I don't know that he'll be back with Arsenal next season. I saw something that said he might be contemplating an MLS move at some point.
I think that'd be horrible for him to move to MLS, to be honest.
I thought, considering the level of play that he's had with Arsenal over the last 2 seasons, I could have written him off before he came to Arsenal, and he's really found some good form. I mean, he's had some shaky outings, but I think overall he's been fairly solid and comes up with stuff that helps our team. When you translate that into what he could do for an MLS team, like, I wouldn't necessarily want him on the Sounders, but there's probably quite a few teams who could benefit from his deep passing ability, because I think that's something that a lot of teams don't have out of their back line. Like that's a hard commodity to come by.
Well, I mean, I think if he was a midfielder, it'd be better. Where Pirlo did for what is it, New York City? I almost said Man City,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't need to have a mobile person, but I think his mobility would be an issue in the back line in MLS more so than in Premier League. And it sounds funny to say, but I think there's just in some MLS teams, it is just speed merchant that really deal with it. So I'm not sure he'd be great. And the record of old Premier League defenders coming to MLS is a very, very poor one. I mean, you look at Vestra, who came to the Sounders. You look at what's his name? He went to Portland. It's just not for whatever reason, the leagues do not translate well together. And I really do think it has to do with teams just having so much pace running just directly at you in the MLS.
Yeah. But the pace of MLS is still so much different from watching, like with MLS kicking back, coming back this last few weeks. It's been really apparent to me how the pace of the game is very distinctly slower.
The pace of the
not
game,
to say that guys aren't fast, but I just feel like the overall pace of the game is not nearly to the speed of the Premier League.
The pace of the game overall, and I think that has to do with the passing and the type of passing that goes on more than it does with the speed of the players.
Yeah, I know it's not in vogue per se to have a three back setup, even though that's what the Sounders are doing right now. That's not common in MLS. But if a team was willing to build that around David Luiz, I think he could find success in that sort of setup, because it would allow him some coverage and, putting a couple younger sets of legs around him and allowing him to do what he does best, to just create from the back. I think he could find a team that would, if he could find a team that would do that, that would be probably his best case scenario. But I could easily see him going anywhere else. I mean, I think that he's a name that could pop up a lot of different places all over the world. So maybe it's MLS, maybe not. But I'm if this is it for him with Arsenal, I'm actually surprisingly sad to see him go. Not that I want to sign him for another season, but I think he's put in a good shift with Arsenal over the past couple seasons.
Agreed. There's nothing official. He might be around for, I think he has 2 more years on his contract anyways, or maybe just one. Was it a one and done? Okay. Yeah. So it's very possible it's last year. I'd actually just not like him to be signed for another year. But that being said, I've always been an apologist for David Luiz. I've liked him quite a bit. I know on this podcast, I've talked quite a bit that I think his passing and some of his plus sides make up for some of his crazy red cards. Plus, I like a player with a little bit of, I don't know, danger. I've always loved Jens Lehmann as a keeper, and he had that same little twitch. So yeah, I think his legacy in my mind won't be a negative one by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, he's so well liked, and I think that sort of locker room presence, that winning mentality, I think a lot of teams are looking for those sorts of players to kind of flesh out their locker room, because even if you're not getting in the regular starting lineup, you can definitely add something to a team just by being there and coaching other players up. And he's definitely known for that, for reaching out to younger players and taking them under his wing. So I think that's something Arteta has called out and has appreciated of Luiz in his time with Arsenal. So wherever he goes next, I think that's going to be a big selling point, is all his experience.
Yeah. And well, after that talk about the Newcastle game, do you have anything to say at all about the West Brom game coming up?
I'll take 3 more points.
I mean, I think it really should be 3 more points. I watched the West Brom Wolves game last week. Was it last Monday? Gosh, Sunday. The days blur together still. And it was a 1-1 draw, but Wolves was all over him that entire game, and it was Wolves finishing that really let him down, which could be very nervous for us, as in our finishing hasn't been consistent recently. But really, all my focus is on Thursday's game. I've given up I had given up the league a while back, and I really, as long I at this point, I don't. It's possible, but I don't see us catching Spurs. So that would be the only like kind of goal I have in the league this year left.
Mm.
And even that is less likely. But yeah, 3 points is 3 points. I'd just rather put all our eggs into the Europa League basket.
Yeah, I think the West Brom game is going to be. Well, who knows? I mean, who knows what our outlook is by the time we get to the West Brom game? Thursday is so huge. I'm already feeling nervous about it, and I'm glad it's going to be at home. But, gosh, it just I hate having our whole season hinge on this one game, because after that, if we don't win on Thursday, we're not going to have too much to talk about. I mean, these are just going to be dead rubber games for the rest of the season. That's going to be pretty sad.
It's kind of weird to be in that situation, really, if you think about it. We haven't been so far out of the conversation for Europe and Champions League, and really just had nothing to play for. And I don't really remember a year where we had literally nothing to play for this early on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, if we win this thing, I think it's pretty well. Well, I don't want to count on anything. I don't even want to talk too much about the next round. So, but if we ended up against Man United in a final before the end of this, or at the end of this tournament, I wouldn't hate that, and I wouldn't, even if we don't win the thing, I'd feel pretty good about getting to a final again. But I just want to like at least have something to play for. At least, even if we can't win the whole thing, I just want to feel like we still have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
If we get knocked out now, it's going to be a depressing end of the season.
Exactly, because then the games really feel like a Europa League or like a European Super League, where all the games don't matter, and
yeah,
it's just teams playing teams.
Everybody's just out to collect a paycheck.
Yeah. It does make you. It's interesting because I have friends that follow. I have a lot of friends that follow West Ham. I have a couple good friends that follow Everton, and it's these teams that really, for a lot of seasons, this is their case. So it's interesting to really learn how it feels to be in their shoes. It's a place I never wanted to be, but I'm trying to take the positives out of this. And it's interesting to see how mid-table obscurity feels.
Well, I think that's a good place to transition to a break and then our second half, because there is a question in here about what if we didn't have all this? What if we didn't have European soccer? I mean, what does that mean for Arsenal going forward if that comes to fruition? So we'll talk about that right after this short break. Welcome back from the break. We've got some good questions from you this week. We even have a voicemail, which I always love. So that's my favorite thing. If y'all want to just like call in your questions rather than writing, I would love that. Let's make it a call-in show.
Me too. Please do. I love having an audio question.
Then we get to hear what you sound like.
Yeah.
First question coming from Riley Johnson. Is it worth it for us to miss European football if that means the club is worth less and might make the Daniel Ek bid worth it to the Cronkies? What do you think, Tim? Is that the reason we should be missing Europa League?
Well, it kind of reminds me of I don't follow NBA, so please, if I'm wrong about how this happens, I apologize. But it kind of sounds like the idea is like how NBA teams will throw away their season just so they can get the first round pick. That used to happen a lot. I think they changed that recently. Yeah. I don't think it works that way. Like with this, I think since we're on it, and I'm sure we have another question about it, the Danny Oak bid is pretty stable at what it is. So it's right around the $3-4 billion. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I find it hard for the Cronkies to take that right away. And I saw a lot of chatter online uh, about how, really the Kroenkes are waiting for the next TV deal, which comes up in 2 years, if I remember correctly.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's going to really push up the value of the club quite a bit, and that the Kroenkes can really, unless they get knocked out of the Premier League, the Kroenkes in the next 2 years, the Kroenkes can really just kind of sit and wait. And you see, when you're talking about the bid, you see, Thierry Henry came out with a kind of an interview where he was talking about it, and he really says that it's a long term bid, that it's not going to happen anytime soon. And us missing the European football next year, I don't see it as anything but a negative for the fans, and I don't think it really changed. I don't think that, again, a statement I've said all the time on this podcast, I don't think the Kroenkes care as long as the money's coming in. And Europa League money, Champions League money actually might be, worth it for them to care, but really Europa League, they don't, isn't. It's a drop in the bucket. So yeah, I don't think it benefits anybody to kind of tank it and not get into Europa League or into European football next year.
Yeah, I don't see that as being a guarantee. We really don't have any insight into the thinking behind the Kroenkes' ownership of the team. Like, what are they trying to get out of it? Um, Clearly, there is no. Um, it is a piece of a portfolio to them of sports teams, and of course, um, you want sports teams to have success. I mean, you don't want to have a portfolio of crap teams that don't win anything. You kind of want them all to be at least mediocre. um, a portfolio of mediocre teams that don't win everything but aren't at the bottom of the table every season looks a lot better and makes you more money, uh, especially when it comes to sponsorships and those things that are um, outside of the game a little bit. You need success to make that extra money. Um, so I don't think you can have a sponsor like Emirates Airlines or Rwanda or whoever it is. You don't get big money from those sponsors unless you're finding success somewhere, because they want to be on the biggest. They want to be in front of eyeballs. And if people aren't watching your team, you're not able to extract that advertising money, that sponsorship money. And that's kind of where you can look to make that little bit extra. If you're looking at a sustainability model and your player salaries and that sort of, if whatever the team is making is getting reinvested back into the team, the place you can make money is TV deals and sponsorship deals. And so the TV deals at this point are kind of a given, but I believe they're split up based on how much you're getting on TV. And if Arsenal continue to decline, they're not going to be on TV as much.
Well, it really depends on a lot of things. There is a ranking based on where you finish in the league, but I mean the thing is the amount of money you make even for finishing in last place is just astronomical. I saw that Man U heard that Man U was really expecting to be valued at about 10 billion. Again, that's a big number, $10 billion after these TV deals. So that's kind of, I think, where the Kroenkes are at, is like, why should they accept a $3 billion, $4 billion bid when if they can stay in the league for 2 more years, they can get a $10 billion bid. And with the Danny Oak thing, the Daniel Ek bid, in reading the papers, again, coming from the Swedish papers, they're talking a lot about that this might be a little bit of a smokescreen, that yeah, he's an Arsenal fan, there might be some reality base to this, but he was on CNBC last week talking about Spotify, which did not have a great quarter last quarter, and he spent most of the time talking about the bid. The papers in Sweden were talking about he has a lot of this money that he wants to find a home for, and maybe Arsenal's the right place, but there's a lot of other investments that he can be making. So I know it's exciting to have Danny Oak as our new owner, and this might go into the next question, but I wouldn't hold my breath necessarily for it.
Yeah. Do you want to try to parse this next question, because we can jump into more of this.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to read the question from Daniel Moran. I always mispronounce his name. I'm sorry, Daniel. Uh,
He's not trying to call you a moron,
yeah,
I
I'm really.
swear.
It's just now it's just lodged in my head, and so like I look at it and I get that fear of I don't want to mispronounce it, and then I mispronounce it because I have the fear. So I apologize. Maybe we'll let Caleb read your questions. But it's a long one. I thought about editing it down, but they make a lot of good points. So buckle in. What is really an ideal ownership scenario? And are the Cronkies really that bad of owners? They're hands-off type who let Arsenal spend what we make. A self-sustaining model in contrast to the Man City and Chelsea sugar daddy approaches. When Abramovich bought Chelsea and the Glazers bought Manure and the Hicks Gillette debacle in Liverpool, we held ourselves above all that meddling with managers buying unnecessary players, Shevchenko at Chelsea, and we're proud of being independent of such whims of mostly foreign owners who were detached from the history and traditions of English football and the club. Now it seems everyone wants a sugar daddy. Is that really the way we want to go? Or should we be focusing on hiring people who have expert talent in the management, director, CEO type roles rather than the Edu, Vinay, Arteta setup we have right now, all of whom are rookies in their role?
I think we kind of there's certainly a be careful what you wish for scenario that could play out here. Um, but in the time since Wenger, we've seen kind of some different ideas of what the modern football structure should be for a team, um, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster as far as the personnel at the top of the pyramid at Arsenal here. Um, the I guess the first question, are the Cronkies really that bad of owners? Um, yes and no. That's not an easy thing to answer, because um, they could be worse. They could be not investing in the team, not caring about the team, and really letting Arsenal go much further into decline. Um, I don't see them being so callous and disinterested that Arsenal is rapidly um, going downhill. They're slowly going downhill. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think there's any intention on the Cronkies' part for them to fail. I think that they are trying to put things in place for Arsenal to succeed in a manageable way, in a way that isn't going to break the bank, in a way that is sustainable. Um, and whether that comes off or not is kind of up to chance a little bit, and up to a little bit of trial and error, because we've seen guys come and go. We've seen Sinlehi and Mislintat and why am I blanking on his name? Went to AC Milan, formerly ran the club.
Dean?
Hmm?
Dean?
No, I really should have this more in the front of my mind, but anyway,
Anyways.
moving on. A guy used to run the club and set all this up before he bailed on us. But we tried some different things, and it's not to say that what we have now is the long-term solution. But you got to start somewhere, and I think this trial and error and rotating cast of characters is only going to continue until something starts to work. It's something that other teams have gone through, and we're just kind of having to catch up a little bit and get on the same page as the successful teams. And it's not an overnight thing unless you have lots of money to spend to kind of paper over the cracks. And if you're not going to invest significantly in the players and the management structure that is necessary to be successful, then it is going to be a little bit of a bumpy road trying to get things to work. Um, I get that Edu, Vinay, and Arteta are kind of the budget solutions. You're kind of buying low and investing in young talent, young management talent, and hoping that one or all of them find success. And it might not work, or it might turn out that in 3 to 5 years, all three of these guys are superstars. We don't know yet. And not everybody comes out and is just immediately successful. I think, especially when you're talking about Arteta, if he came out and was, firing on all cylinders and had this team whipped into shape and was able to turn shit into gold, it would be a miracle. I don't think that is normal. I don't think that it should be expected. I think that that's a miracle if it does happen for your team. You've stumbled into something amazing if you find a rookie coach that can do all that. But I think that I don't think it was a bad decision to put these guys in the management roles that they're in. I think that we have to give that sort of thing time. I'm not, despite what role Vinay had in the ESL, I don't really hold him accountable for that. I think that's more of a ownership decision that he kind of got. Will probably have to take the fall for a little bit and it sounds like he's had to make the rounds and apologize to a lot of other teams and people involved. And that sucks for him because he's really pretty much only been in his role like a year and is already kind of having to eat shit and be the whipping boy for the Cronkies, which sucks for him. But that doesn't mean he's bad at his job. That doesn't mean it was a mistake to put him in there. But, I think all that said, where do we want this team to go? We want them to be successful. I don't think that's going to be happening quickly unless there's significant investment coming in. And I don't know if Eck is going to come in and be able to buy this team and invest significantly right off the bat or at all. I mean, we just don't know. He doesn't have the deep pockets that the Cronkies have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down. This is a good question by Daniel, because I think it really comes down to a fundamental question, which is what do we want out of this team, and what do we want as Arsenal fans? I remember when the Cronkies were fighting Usmanov over control of the game, and all of us Arsenal fans believe that Kroenke was the white knight saving us from Usmanov and turning us into a sugar daddy club. That was the fans rejoiced at the Kroenkes taking control, because we felt that they were a safer pair of hands than a Russian oligarch, despite the fact that there's probably more evidence that Usmanov was an actual Arsenal fan. But I think the question is, what is success and what do we want? If success is winning the Champions League, winning the league, and becoming a dominant team, I think the ship has sailed on a club like Arsenal being self-sustaining and doing that. I think the way that soccer is right now, and this is just cold hard facts, and I hope I'm not being Debbie Downer Tim, you need petrodollars. You need a just billions and billions of dollars just thrown into the team to do it. And you look at all these teams, these Chelsea, these Man City, PSG, all these teams that are in the final stages of Champions League, all the teams that are in the top ends of the league winning titles, they are not making money, and making money isn't even an idea in their head at this point. And if that's your idea of success, if that's your idea of what Arsenal is, you need a sugar daddy. And to be honest, Daniel Ek isn't going to be your sugar daddy. I mean, he barely has enough together to buy the team, let alone bankroll in the billions and billions of dollars for payroll and for buying players that we would need to get up at ahead. And if you look at it, like everyone will point to Leicester and be like, well, Leicester won the league. That was like the flukiest of fluky years. And people forget that they actually invested heavily in that team as well. The owners, the Thai owner who passed away, forgetting his name right now, but he invested fairly heavily in that team as well. So we may also have to be at a point where success may be being a self-sustaining team that has integrity. If you want to know my ideal ownership scenario, it is something like a Daniel Ek, or someone who's a fan, someone who's a local owner, and us kind of internalizing the idea that we're, not going to be able to 100% compete with, petrodollars or oligarchs spending billions of dollars into these playthings, but we can still enjoy the team and hold our head high. And then like my absolute ideal ownership situation is that everything goes to a 50+1 rule and the fans own the team. But that it would take basically a nationalization of soccer teams, which I don't think would go over well. It's possible, but I don't think it'll go over well. So I think you have to just kind of ask yourself, what is success and what you want to have as success.
Let me ask you this, a hypothetical question, and this is something I was thinking about earlier today. Imagine you were a Man City fan. How would you feel about the success that they have found, getting to the Champions League final? Do you feel like as a fan you would feel bad, or even like there was any do you feel like you can fully get behind the team that has been given everything, as far as the best coach, the best players, and it's all been bought and paid for with billions and billions of dollars over the years? Would you feel the same way as if you were a fan of Man City versus Arsenal, who maybe tried to do it in a sustainable way? Like, does that matter to you at the end of the day and how you feel about that success?
And this is where it gets to a personal thing. I think it does matter to me. How we win is important to me. And the teams I've generally supported haven't been successful clubs. And there is an integrity. There's a reason I'm enjoying watching. I know they're a rival, but West Ham this year, I think, because West Ham are doing it right. I mean, then again, there's a lot of money going to hands. It's not like anyone in the Premier League has clean hands. Let's not kid ourselves. But and it's so much of a triumph when you live within your means and just do it. Whereas, I think there is, a majority of City fans will, be fine with it. But I will also say, and this is 100% true, which is that a majority of the City fans weren't around when they were losing. And I guarantee you that I know there are City fans that have been around. So like, I'm not trying to throw shade, but when I started watching Arsenal, you wouldn't see a City fan anywhere in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And
they were in like the third tier. 20 years ago.
Exactly. So if you're talking about like City fans that have been around for a while, I think there's a lot of people that are, I don't think they're as embarrassed because they'll say that, Man U really started it when they went through their dominant period, and that they're just catching up to these big teams. But I think there is a little bit of shame, and I don't know. And it could just be me projecting, because as I said, I would be much happier living within your means and playing fairly and getting those drips of glory and really feeling like you earned it, as opposed to being the team that has the biggest payroll winning, which is just, what's happening now.
So would you advocate for a salary cap or some sort of structure that forced teams to be on a more level playing field?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think if financial fair play was actually enforced, in which you had to live within your means, I think that's a fairer way of doing things. And as I've discussed before on this podcast, there are like problems with financial fair play, which is that if you're stuck as a smaller team, there's no way to catch up to the big teams now. And in a lot of ways, the cat's out of the bag. But I think it would push it towards a fairer way. I think salary caps, there's pluses and minuses on salary caps. We see it in the MLS. And I think also salary caps are unsustainable in a global market. Really, if you're in the global market for players, you just can't deal with the salary
Well,
cap.
yeah, because everybody would have to be playing by the same rules, or else leagues who decided not to have salary caps would dominate. And I mean, that's kind of what China was for a little bit
Yeah.
until they realized that's
Yeah,
unsustainable.
exactly. So, I mean, I think there's an ideal system, and I don't have the answers. I just know that the way things are going now, it really feels unsustainable, and there's going to be a crash at some point. That the billions of dollars that are coming into clubs are just not sustainable, and I think that's the pressure you're seeing, and why you're seeing like the Super League kind of pop up its head. Because I've been saying for as long as this podcast has been going on, I know Juventus is out of money. I know that Real Madrid and Barcelona are hitting a wall with money, and they're going to be going through some dire times. Very much, they're going to be having to figure out how to get rid of some of these players and these wages within the next year. So, but be like I don't know. I don't know the way to go about it, but the way it is now, it's distasteful. I mean, I wouldn't personally like to have a sugar daddy owner buy a bunch of players and we become the best team in the world based off that. Then you might as well just watch the Globetrotters or something.
Yeah, I guess if Daniel Ek somehow came in and had all the money in the world and was able to buy all the players that we wanted, even if he is an Arsenal fan, I don't know if that would feel like the Arsenal way. I think they would still, for the fans who have been fans for a long time and maybe have a desire to go back to something, I don't know, that maybe never existed. The Arsenal way is maybe something that is ethereal and not real, or is very different depending on who you talk to. I don't know if there is one Arsenal way. I think you talk to different players that have played for Arsenal. You talk to different coaches. I think there's kind of a set of ideals that Wenger set in place that maybe are more idealistic than the reality of things. But if you're trying to have a code for your team and nobody else is playing by that set of rules, you're kind of just setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. Like, I follow cycling quite a bit, and there's a period in the 90s that everyone knows about with cycling, which basically everyone and their mother was using performance-enhancing drugs while they were cycling. And the excuse always is from the people who have admitted it is, well, everyone was doing it, so I was just doing it so I could be level with everybody else. But it still doesn't make it better. I personally judge those riders who are using performance-enhancing drugs, because there are very few, but there were riders who didn't. And I think that's the same with soccer in general, and especially the Premier League. When I look at it, I think just because everyone else has a sugar daddy and is getting injections of cash doesn't mean that it makes it better. I don't know. I'm also
we saw that with the ESL. I mean, Arsenal were willing to go along with the crowd because even though they were doing the wrong thing, they didn't want to be left behind. I mean, peer pressure is a dangerous thing, right? So I don't know that when push comes to shove, whether those morals or that code actually exists within Arsenal as it is, even if they try to bring in a coach like Arteta to try to reestablish some of that. It really does come from the top down. And if those ideals aren't prevalent in the ownership, then, I don't know. I don't know if it would be any different with Daniel Ek. I don't know if if being a fan is enough. I don't know if that's really going to create the atmosphere or get us back to where we should be, or there's just so many unknowns, and I don't know if money solves all these problems without without somehow marrying that with a code of ideals of what Arsenal should be. And I don't know how you codify that without having real meaningful involvement from the fans. And it sounds like Daniel Ek is open to that, but I think we as fans still have to come together and figure out what that means to us as well. Like, what do we want from this team in an ideal situation where we have the money to spend, but we also don't want to be Man City. Like, how do you find that happy middle ground where everything feels good, but we still are able to compete? I don't know if that actually works.
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think one of the biggest things why the Cronkies are a bad owner, and you know, as much as we're kind of wishy-washy, I do want to make a full statement that I don't think the Cronkies are a good owner, and I think one of the ways that that ownership could change is that if or go for the better is that they have more fan involvement, that they do not just give lip service but give real just fan input, take it into account the what is it, the fan collective, I'm forgetting the name of it, the supporters trust. If you actually not just sit there and give them a videotaped apology, but literally go through and try and work out what Arsenal is with the fans, I think you would have a huge step in a better ownership. And I think maybe that is the one place where Daniel Ek might be better. We don't know, but he seems at least to be a little bit more willing to do that than the Cronkies, who, as I've said before, just destroyed St. Louis and ripped the soul out of their team there.
I'm going to throw out an idea and you tell me what you think of this. What if they said to Ek, you can come in and buy a portion of Arsenal, and we're going to put you in charge of remodeling what Arsenal is, or at least getting Arsenal back to what Arsenal should be, and you can be the face of that remodel and try to connect the fans back to this team. Do you think that would go a long way in getting the Cronkies, who would still be majority owners? Do you think that would get them back into the fans' good graces if they were more open to something like that?
I think it would go a very long way towards doing that. I mean, there is a bit of of anti-Americanism in the dislike for the Cronkies, and I am going to say it, that you notice that a lot of it has to do with your Americans coming in and don't understand the game. There's a lot of truth to what is said, but there is a lot of I think there's going to be if the Cronkies are still involved, there's going to be still a large group of people that are just unhappy because they're just the Cronkies for a variety of reasons. I think it would go a long way. I think the team was better run when you had a board of directors and you had multiple stakeholders all kind of working together, as opposed to just a single ownership, which was, how it was before the Cronkies bought up everything. Again, I think being able to have supporters own part of the club, which is one of the things that happened when the Cronkies came in, is they got rid of that, changes things. So, but that's a long answer too. I think would go a decent way, but I don't think would fix everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious if they could ever find that sort of compromise, or if the Cronkies would be willing to give up any portion of the team in order to save face and try to build a bridge back to the fans. I don't get the sense that they know how to create trust or create any connection with the fans. They haven't really needed to with their other franchises. And I think as many people as they can get involved that have connections with the fans, if they can get Ek on board and he can bring along Henry and Bergkamp and Vieira, get those players as kind of a make good or a way to make the fans feel better about the ownership. That might go a long way, but I think it really, at the end of the day, it's all about the results and what the product is on the field. So whatever the back of the house looks like doesn't matter as much as what the on-field product is. So if they can, a lot of this can be forgiven if they can find a way to win and find a way to invest in this team and get the team playing like we feel they should. I think that's the bottom line. Is I don't think anybody would care if they invested $1 billion in the team and we got to play the type of game that we wanted to play. I think we'd be all for that. But we're so far from that we are gonna quibble and have a lot of rocky ground until things kind of settle. And I don't know how long this battle for ownership is going to go, or if it's even going to be a battle. But I see some rocky days ahead, especially because I don't think the fans have been appeased at all. I think there's still a lot of anger and a lot of unrest that still needs to settle out. So we'll see how this continues. I think there's still a lot to be done to fix things.
Speaking of unrest, I think Jonathan Monias has a question that kind of goes on this, and it's an audio question, if I remember.
Yes. So let's listen to what Jonathan has sent us.
Hey guys, this is Jonathan Monilis. There's a lot of drama around the soccer world right now, and a lot of people are like jumping ship on their teams. I know I'm probably not going to be watching the World Cup this year, and I just wanted to know if there was anything that was like a line in the sand or like a bridge too far. If there's anything that the club could do that would make you stop supporting Arsenal. I'm assuming it's something pretty big, seeing as you have podcasts dedicated to Arsenal. But yeah, is there anything? And if so, what is it? All right. Thanks, guys.
So yeah, I mean, basically his question is there a line that Arsenal could cross that would make us not fans? I really considered it, I mean, I this was something that crossed my mind with the Super League. If that had come to fruition, like what would I have done as a fan? And it's really tough. I think we are kind of in a little bit of a marriage with Arsenal, just because we have chosen to have this podcast. But because I think it would be a bigger deal if we just said, okay, well, we're just going to walk away from the podcast. We're going to walk away from this team. I think that's it's kind of hard to imagine that. And I think like the thing, like when I think back to when I started watching Arsenal, they were coming off the Invincible season. I think I started watching them probably in 05, 06. So they still had kind of the afterglow of the Invincibles, and a lot of shine left on them. And it's, when you're picking a team, it's really easy to pick a team that's successful and harder to stick with a team when that success fades away. But to me, when you pick a team, you're in it. You're in it through thick and thin. And despite what the Cronkies might do, or if it's the Super League or whatever it is, I feel like I am with this team till the end, and I have to kind of separate out ownership from players, from coaches, from all these. You kind of have to compartmentalize a little bit to really keep the love going with the team, because it's not always going to be easy, and it's not always going to be fun to watch teams fail on a regular basis, or not reach the heights that they once did. So to me, I kind of think it's always a long game. It's never about what they're doing right now. It's kind of, what have they done in my lifetime? How have they brought me joy? How have they brought me pain? And for the most part, I think the scale is always tipped in the joy column. But if it got to the point maybe where I just was not having fun with it anymore and wasn't able to find joy in the wins or anything like that, I would consider it. But I think that would be I don't know if there would be one event. I think it would be kind of more of a feeling of just not having fun with it anymore. And if I'm not having fun, then what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is, the quick answer is no. I don't think there is a line, in that I consider myself always be a fan, because you can't take away my history of the team. They can't take away that moments of joy. And like I'd never ever jump ships or anything like that. But I think there could be points where I stop paying as much attention. I think that is a very real chance. And really, it's not necessarily success on the field. As I said, I'd be very much more content to have a mid-table team that I felt was playing a fair game. I think really it comes down to an integrity type of thing, that if the Super League is a very close deal, like it's something where I mean, I probably wouldn't have watched the Super League if it existed in the format that we're talking about straight up. I think it was like, I would think it was a boring competition in general, just as a soccer fan, not as an Arsenal fan, and B, as an Arsenal fan, just how gross it was. Like there'd be a part of me that just would want nothing to do with it. And I can see that happening more than anything else. That just like the passion dies out. The will to wake up on a Saturday morning at 4:00 in the morning to watch a game is going to be less. And I mean, the other thing is just technical aspects of it. I have my first Swedish team that I followed was Västra Frölunda, and they will still have a very close part. They were the team I watched when I was in Sweden. They are unfortunately now in the 3rd division of Swedish soccer, which is semi-pro. They were at one point in the 8th division, so they've managed to come back a little bit. But I literally just can't follow them. There's no way to watch them on TV. There's no way to, like even the Swedish papers don't cover them. So, there's that technical aspect, but again, none of it doesn't mean I'm not a fan. It just means the passion's gone out a little bit. And that's the scary thing, is like, if a team just makes your passion disappear, it's sometimes it's hard to get back,
Yeah, I think back kind of a little bit on my my Sounders journey, mm-hmm. and it's a very different thing, because comparing the hometown club to my chosen club is it's just a different scenario a little bit. Like, I've never seen Arsenal in person. That's crazy to think. And I had Sounders season tickets early on and was at a lot of games, and I was very passionate, and you more so. Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as how involved you are with the team and being a fan. And I think it's for me, it's waned a little bit just because I can't be at every game and I can't be as involved and as passionate. But at the end of the day, I'm still a big Sounders fan. I still try to watch every game. But I do think, like, just life has an effect on how much effort you can put into being a fan. And like, I've kind of like chosen to be a next level Arsenal fan when we started doing this podcast. Like, I think that has forced me to watch more games, has forced me to be more involved, has forced me to dig in a little bit more. And if I wasn't having fun with that, I wouldn't do it. I think that would I mean, the podcast is work at the end of the day, but I mean, if I wasn't having fun with it, I wouldn't do it. I think that, like, no matter what team you follow, you have to be getting more joy than pain, or else it's not worth it. Like, there's other things you could be doing with your time. And so I think that's the calculus you have to put into it, no matter what team or sport you follow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head that if it starts becoming way more pain than joy, there are better things I could be doing in life. But I think you also brought up a very interesting point. It's a very interesting point for us as fans of Arsenal from afar, that it is so different being a game day in, day out, week in, week out, going to games, going to away games fan. You have a very different connection to the club than we'll ever have. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And some of our listeners have that connection, and but I think a large majority of us in the Northwest don't have that same connection. So it feels different. I think that might be a lot of the dissonance between what different expectations of what an ideal ownership is. The feeling I get from just, lurking on social media is it tends to be the people that aren't the game going fans that want the sugar daddy owner, that want to do it. Whereas the people day in, day out, they know that they're going to go to Arsenal when it's a third league club, you know, like
Mhm.
they know that they will always be going to Arsenal. Their kids will always be going to Arsenal, and they don't have to rely on them being on Peacock or on NBCSN to watch the games. They can just walk down the street and do it. And it's interesting. I'd love to hear back from our listeners about the differences in this connection, if they feel the difference in it, or if they feel that it's no different.
Yeah, I've always felt like not as like an imposter or anything like that, but like I do feel like I am a different fan being far away and not being able to go to games and not having that local level of connection. But it almost feels like more personal to me because I chose this team. Like I chose to put the effort and the time. It wasn't something that was just like, oh, well, I live in London and that's my team, you know, like I something connected with me that made me choose this team and I chose to stick with it over all these years. And so like to me that is important and I hold that dearly because like that's something I've like cultivated and developed over 15 years or whatever it's been, you know, it's been something that like I've had to put effort into, you know. It's not just something that happens because of my location.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I know I've told this story. I don't know if I've told it on the pod before, but I remember. So I went to the old Highbury and could not afford to get a ticket in, and I've walked around the Emirates again, could not afford to get a ticket in. So I went and watched the game at the Gunners Pub, which is just down the street. And I remember the whole time I was there, I had to, as a soccer fan, not from London and specifically not from the United States, I felt like the whole time I was there, I had to prove that I knew as much or more than anybody else about Arsenal, or they'd just dismiss me. You know, like I had to pronounce the names right. I had to know who scored what goal in what year, know the history, know 89, even though I never watched a game in 89 and that sort of thing. And the difference between that, and then I remember going to my first Sounders game and just stepping onto the it wasn't Century League Field at the time. I forget what it was called, Royal Browan Park. And I remember just realizing that I didn't have to explain to anyone why I was there. I didn't have to prove anything. It was just natural. And I think there is a level of difference in that, but I think it sometimes can push fanaticism in a whole other way because you have to prove when you're supporting a team that's not from your local area,
Yeah. Yeah. I that's where I feel like I'm like, oh, am I really a fan because I don't have like a deep historical knowledge of Arsenal. Like my knowledge is like basically the last 20 years of Arsenal, or I know of other stuff, but like my personal connection to it is the last 20 years. And I've never been one to like want to revel in what Arsenal was or has done. It's like, to me, it's about what is Arsenal doing today. Like that's where I really find the joy, is like what's happening now and what's coming. And that's where I like to kind of live and keep my, that's where I kind of think the podcast is really about, is we're not, I mean, we kind of look back a little bit, like we delved into the 1800s today, but like I think our bread and butter is looking ahead, or like being current. And I don't know if some people might think that's like I'm not a true fan, or might think I'm less of a fan, or might even think that because of the fact that I'm not in London or from London or have ever been to London.
Yeah.
And so I don't try to think about that too much. I really just try to be the fan that I am, and take that as good enough, because I know there are plenty of people out there who are just like me, and that's okay.
Yeah, the word I've seen this happen in the music scene, when you talk about, like, I listen to a lot of metal, and you have like these bands, and like there's these people that like try and tell you you're not really a metal fan because you're not listening to this band or whatever. And the word is gatekeeping, and gatekeeping is just something I just dislike. I'm much more about, oh, you like this? I do too. Let's find out why we like it together and go on a journey, as opposed to try and like I don't know, show off that you're a far superior human being. Because as I said, I can't compete. I've never seen them live either. I didn't even go out to Colorado when they played in Colorado. I've been lucky enough to go to London, but as I said, like I didn't get in. And I don't know, like for me, it's much more constructive and much more interesting to find our commonalities as people who like the same thing, as opposed to try and figure out why we're superior beings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. This podcast has already gotten extra long, but I think the thing that like really made me feel connected and really felt like a real Arsenal fan was when we went to Kenya, and we could connect with people who also probably have never been to London and still were super passionate about Arsenal and like or just the sport in general, and we could have banter and share the joy and pain and all that stuff with people who equally were distant from London and but still had as much love for the game. And I thought that was like one of the best things I've ever experienced in my life, was just running into people and talking even a little bit about Arsenal and soccer and having that connection in a completely different country. And really that was, I don't know, it made it feel like, oh yeah, this is why these global sports are really important and special. And it's why I continue to follow it, because it's something that's bigger than me, which is cool. Like I even like, I don't know, the Sounders feel like they're local and they're special because they're my team and they're my hometown team, but Arsenal feels like I'm part of something much bigger. So that is special in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, no matter where you are in the world, when you meet another Arsenal fan, you can commiserate together, and it is a special bond of like realizing you're both Arsenal fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've gone super long, and we could touch on fantasy, or we could just end this episode.
If there's anybody left, I don't think they're interested in fantasy right now.
I hope there's people left, because I feel like this is our most honest talk about what Arsenal means to us, I think, ever. So
of course we saved it for the like minute 1/3 or 1 hour 30 of our podcast.
Well, I hope at least Jonathan Monilis stay for his question. We have one listener. That's great. Well, anyway, thank you all. If you have stuck with us this long, thank you for listening to this extra special episode. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to our podcast wherever you pick it up, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Google. Go subscribe, hit that button so we come to your device of choice every week. And if you've done that already, leave us a review. Let other people know how much you like us and how much you don't like us. Whatever you feel, let other people know, and just get the word out there with your feelings. If you haven't followed us on Twitter, we are at W of N London. You can send us questions for our next episode, and if you want more than 140 characters, you can also do westofnorthlondon@gmail.com. Send us an email. Send us your recommendation for books or beers or whatever is on your mind. Send it our way. We'd love to hear from you. And we do have a YouTube channel. We do post there, whether it's video or just audio. It's on YouTube for your convenience. So if podcasts aren't your thing, although I don't know if you've listened this long, they're probably your thing. But, if you'd like to watch us or have YouTube on in the background while you work, you can go to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, like our videos. That would be a huge help. And last but not least, got to thank Bobcat for their theme song. bobc.at is their website. Go check out No Course to Follow. Their latest album is there, and much, much more. So that's the place to find them. And I think that is more than enough for this week. So as always,
see you at the next gun show.